about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest helping non safety executives turn morning huddles into high performance leadership moments without adding a minute to their schedule. And of course, the author of the book, The Heart and Soul of Safety, none other than Mr. Paul Espenan.
Hi, Daniel. Good to be with you at this time. Just a great opportunity to talk about books, something I'm very much in love with. You can see on my bookshelf behind me, I have some of my favorites. So, books are very near and dear to me, and I can tell you, as perhaps it is true for you, that books have influenced my life greatly. And the part of the reason why I decided to write a book was because of the great influence of books in my life.
Certainly, and thank you, Mr. Paul, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world through your book, The Heart and Soul of Safety. So, today let's talk about your book itself and tell us. You spent over 35 years in oil and gas EHT roles at companies like Halliburton, ConocoPhillips, and now Diversified. You started in environmental law and consulting before moving into leadership. Was there a specific moment, an incident, a conversation, or a failure that made you realize that compliance and rules alone would never be enough to truly get people home safety?
Yeah, Daniel, there were many times in my career when I realized this. When you graduate from school, you have book sense, and a lot of times we think that's all we need. And the best way to describe it is this. Uh, you could know what the rules are and you could do your best to comply with them. But in the end, because of our humanness, we have to have more than that. Um, I start in the beginning of the book explaining that everybody in the entire world needs some form of inspiration, and we just have to have it. And so, where do leaders get their inspiration from? Well, many of them it is from books, and so that is one of the reasons why I did this. But along the way, there are so many tragic things that you pick up, and one of those that really comes to mind. You realize when you investigate those incidents that it is our human nature that was part of the root cause. One of the investigation methods that we use is called latent cause analysis. And at its heart, it asks this question. And this is a very human question. It says, what is it about us, all of us, that allowed this incident to happen? And then on a personal level, what is it about me or everyone else who's at the business? What is it about them that they allowed to happen or they allowed to occur that contributed to it? And so you can see that until you can answer that question, you really haven't looked inside of your heart to see what you should have done that could have prevented it. And I remember many years ago investigating an incident where it was quite emotional when people had to, at the conclusion of that investigation, say what it was that they felt they could have done, but for whatever reason they hadn't. And so you can't be a safety professional really in the truest sense of it and just be all about rules and regulations You have to realize our humanness, and you have to understand so well that you can say, for the person who maybe did something wrong, that given the circumstances, you understand it well enough to say that you understand why they did what they did, why they made the mistake, and that you yourself would do the same thing if you had similar circumstances. And Daniel, until you're at that point of understanding, you're really in no position to help. And so that's one of the premises. I tell some stories in the book that make this very clear, that to lead from the heart, you must be empathetic and you must be caring. And that's where the power comes from, because that is sincere and it's authentic. And so that's really some of the realizations that I came to, and some of the genesis and the reason for why I wrote the book.
Very well said, Mr. Paul. You describe as someone whose main passion of getting people home safely has led him to focus on transformational leadership and positively influencing corporate culture. What does transformational leadership look like in a drilling rig or a mainstream processing site where the default culture has often be command and control?
Yeah, that's you are such a good question asker. I appreciate all the homework that you do. That is a wonderful question. Uh, I will tell you this story. In 2013, I was exposed to formal training in transformational leadership. The work that I that was used for that training sessions for those training sessions was a book by the name of The Three Laws of Human Performance by a gentleman named Zaffron. And Steve Zaffron and Logan. And in this book, what you learn is the power of transformational leadership. And so, Daniel, I'll give you a quick example of how that works. Uh, you imagine a perfect future 2 years from now or sometime in the future where the issue at hand that seems unsolvable is solved. And then I ask you to describe that perfect future in great detail. And you would do things like, what does everything look like? You describe it. And then I ask you to live in that future. And then I ask you to stand in that future and make a commitment to that future. And once you're there and imagining it and committing to it, then I ask you to look back to where you are and see what big rocks, what big walls have to be changed or moved so that you can arrive at this perfect future. That's just one example of transformational leadership. Okay. But what it does involve, you asked about, what does it look like on a drilling rig, or what does it look like at an oil and gas facility? It looks like not accepting the excuses or not accepting the status quo or the way things we've always done around here as given. You come in with a contrarian view that things can be done safely, they can be done efficiently, and you challenge everything. And I'll tell you that one of the biggest questions that a leader who is transformative will ask is this one: what is preventing you from doing whatever it is that you want to do? And most of the time, people say, well, I'm busy, I can't do this, or it's not efficient, or it takes too much time, or it costs too much money. But those are actually excuses. In the book, I talk about a famous, there's a saying, maybe you've heard of Jocko Willink, and he actually has an expression. He says, all your excuses are lies. But in transformational leadership, what you find is this, is that most of the time when you ask that question, what is preventing you from doing this? The answer is most likely just yourself. And there's power in that realization that we ourselves are the only thing that's stopping us. See, there are no limits. The only thing that limits us is our imagination. I love that Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory Imagination song, and my wife's sick of it for me playing it. Pure Imagination, one of my favorite songs. But anyway, I hope that answers your question. You apply it by not accepting the status quo.
Very well said, Mr. Paul. In 2014, when oil prices collapsed, you developed a positive leadership workshop to improve engagement and morale during a brutal downturn. What made you choose positivity as the antidote to fear and uncertainty? And what did you learn about the human heart when the industry was its lowest?
Yeah, that's a very transformative time of my life. The company where I was had just gone through a round of layoffs, and our senior leaders got together and they said, "Hey, what are we going to do to bring everyone back together?" And I said, "Send me." And they said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to uh, do a 4-hour workshop on teaching people how to be happy." And well, we called it positive leadership, okay? Because people could get their head around that. If I told people I was going to teach them how to be happy, they were skeptical. So we called it positive leadership, but it really was happiness. And they let me do a workshop, and the reviews of everybody who went in that workshop, the first one, were so overwhelmingly positive and transformative in their lives. People saying, going back to leadership, saying, "Hey, this changed my life. I look at things differently." Uh, all of that, and then the next thing, the chief operating officer says to me, "Paul, you simply cannot do enough of this." And he made it so that every vice president around the country arranged for me to come and teach these workshops. And Daniel, it was amazing. People, I still have some of the testimonials from that work that I did there about how much I help people kind of get out of a rut or get unstuck or realize just how fortunate they were. And it helped me because I had to teach it again and again and again and again, so it really reinforced that me being a positive person no matter what. Subsequently, after I got through the whole company, they said, "Okay, what's next, Paul? What do we do next?" And so I built another workshop called Sustaining Positive Leadership. I still have, I gave them little cards. You can see the little cards here. I still have them. I keep them on my desk. These are all the cards and the handouts from those workshops about how you can be a positive leader. And so that's why I did it, because I knew that it would be, again, leadership from the heart. I knew it would be authentic. I knew that people needed this. I knew that you don't talk about happiness in corporate America very much. And but we really needed to talk about happiness because people were hurting because their friends had been laid off and they didn't have any hope. So that's kind of a great story about that chapter of my life. I was thrilled to be able to work with people so they could see things. They wind up teaching me things that were just so powerful. A quick story that happened: there was a single mom in one of the classes, and she said that after dinner one day, her daughter asked, "Hey, mommy, can we play?" And she said, "No, honey, um, I can't play right now because we get to do the dishes." Well, we had taught her that there's a difference. See, have to versus get to. Most people would say, "No, honey, I'm sorry. I have to do the dishes." But no, you get to do the dishes because you have dishes and you had a meal, and not everybody has that. And there's a difference. I tell us another story in the book. I got on an elevator in a crowded elevator in downtown Houston, and it was a Monday, and everybody had a glum face. And I just announced out loud, I said, "Hey, everybody, we don't have to do this." And I got some stares. Everybody looking at me like I'm nuts. One guy, he said under his breath, "Well, I got a house note I got to pay." Anyway, I said, "Well, wait a minute. You don't have to do it. You get to do this. There's a difference." And then everybody smiled. And so it goes to show you that gratitude and happiness is a choice. When you understand what you have, then you're going to be happy. And that's kind of it. I could talk about this all day long, Daniel.
Well, so Mr. Paul, you've said your passion is getting people home safely. The phrase is common is safety, but you added soul to the conversation. What is the difference between work first and complies with safety rules and one that feels safety in the bones, in their very identity?
Yeah, that's a very perceptive question. It really does come down to this. I tell people, Daniel, to take a picture of their what I tell them to tape it or glue it to their hard hat. I tell them if they're working at a desk to make sure they have a picture of their what matters most, they or their family, right? Or their pet or whatever they love to do in life. That's their what matters most. And tell them to put that front and center because that's really what they care about, right? That's their motivation. That's most people you ask them, I say, why are you working? It's to provide for my family. And I connect with them. So let's say we're having a meeting, having a safety meeting. I'm going to get there early. I'm going to, as soon as people start coming in, I'm going to start talking to them about their interests in life. I'm going to start finding out what they like to do when they're not at work. And then I'm going to talk about those reasons which they hold in their soul, their very soul, what their essence. They hold that as the most important thing. And I'm going to do my best in that meeting for every safety requirement I present to give them that greater why, as Simon Sinek tells us, right? The greater why, he talks about it often. Because if I just ask them to do something because it's a rule, that's one thing. They might do it for a little while, but if I tell them why and how it connects to the greater good and what's at stake, then they'll not just do it, they'll do it right and they'll keep doing it. So, really, what's required to sustain safety is to have that heart and soul. And that's why I focus so much on motivational theory and what motivates people. That fascinates me, why we choose what we choose. And the human mind is something I study because at my core, I want to be able to prevent those incidents. Uh, one another story that I tell in the book is my dad had an occupational medicine clinic, and he was seeing people who were hurt on the job. And I didn't get to see my dad a whole lot. He was busy, and I remember thinking, and maybe it's part of the reason why I became a safety professional was because I could see all the injuries of the people who went to his clinic, and he would stitch them up and sew up their fingers and help them to get well, and how grateful they were. But I think that part of me wanted to be able to prevent that. And you can see from the imagery on the cover of the book, you can see the connection to the heart. You can see the heartbeat, which is like a ECG. That's the connection to my upbringing and my childhood, related to my dad having to uh, try to heal these people who had been hurt on the job. And so the connection to the heart and soul isn't just something that a safety professional needs to be effective. It sure is helpful, but it also connects to me very personally because of who I am and my upbringing and my dad.
Well said, very well said, Mr. Paul. You started your career as a legal assistant in environmental and occupational law. How did moving from legal side, where compliance is king, to the human side of leadership change the way you measure success?
Yeah, I remember those years well. In fact, a bit of a shout out to an attorney there where I worked. I thought I knew how to write when I got out of grad school, but a lady there, Connie, uh, she would mark up my work. This was before we had word processors, Daniel. I'm going to date myself, and used a dictaphone to dictate, legal briefs. And I would do my work, and then she was my supervising attorney, and she would mark my work up with a red pen. Well, there was often more red on the page than there was black. I thought I knew how to write, but she really helped me to learn how to write. But your question about making the shift from compliance to other matters is, again, when things go wrong, you learn a lot. And I learned how to listen. And part of being a good safety person is you wind up being a bit of a therapist. I'm not a practicing therapist, but people, if you have the ability to get people to talk to you about what they were thinking or what's going wrong, or their personal junk or whatever is going on in their life and why they're distracted and why they're stressed, if you have that ability to get them to just talk about it, you can learn a lot. So I think that's what would happen to me is I had a disarming ability about me to uh, people would trust me, that they knew they could talk to me. They knew that I'd be compassionate and kind and understanding. And as a result, I began to learn more and more that compliance was never enough. You can't do it. Nobody can maintain it because we're human. It had to be driven from the heart if it was going to be effective. And like I said before, if it was going to continue, see, I can get anybody to follow a rule for a day, but to get them to follow it for their whole life, there can only be one driver, one motivator, and that's their heart and soul. So I hope that helps you understand.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Paul. You've led investigations and corrective actions for numerous severe incidents, including fatalities. And when you show up to a site after something has gone terribly wrong, what do you carry with you? And how have these moments shaped your belief that safety must be led from the heart, not just the head?
Yeah. Once again, it's so tragic and so terrible. The first thing that you think about is the family. You think about the ripples. You think about the impact about the people who are going to be impacted by this, and that motivates you to just do the best you can to honor that individual. So you're thinking about, okay, how will I learn so much from this that it will make it so that this individual didn't lose their life in vain. And that's the toughest thing that you'll ever do. It's quite emotional, but you have to honor them by getting every drop of learning out of it. I was trained years ago, back in my ConocoPhillips days, to use a method called latent cause analysis by Failsafe Network. It was life changing for me because it taught that we had to be, again, I've already said this, but it taught that you had to understand the incident so well that you could say you would have done the same. Most incident investigations don't get that far. And the reason why you had to go that far is because that's the only way to get the culture. You know, there's a saying out there that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what it means is that you could have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have a powerful and strong safety culture, then you're nowhere. So when a fatality occurs, you have to understand the culture. Uh, the easiest definition of culture is the way things are around here. And you have to be able to answer the question, what is it about the way things are around here that allowed this to occur? So to honor that person. So you're thinking about that. You want to do a great job. You want to make sure that you get every ounce of learning and do it in a respectful way that honors this person.
Mr. Paul, beautifully articulated. And to wrap up our discussion for today, when you speak about the heart and soul of safety, you're asking hardened industry veterans to be vulnerable. What gives you the right to ask that of them? And what did you say to the leader who thinks all this hard talk is soft?
I absolutely love this question because I think the biggest mistake that can be made is believing that these hardened individuals don't have a heart. They're big teddy bears, Daniel. They're big teddy bears. They got a soft side. They may act tough on the outside, but they all have a heart, and you just have to find a way to find it. A hardened individual, when you do show that you have a soft side and they admit it, you really can make a breakthrough.
Certainly, yes, indeed. So, Mr. Paul, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, The Heart and Soul of Safety?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. I think from some of the stories I've told here, you got to learn a little bit about me. And I can promise you that I put my heart and soul into writing this book so that people can benefit from it. It's about saving lives, it's about bettering lives. And I think this is a book that people can truly live and make their own. And I hope that it does save lives. So thank you, Daniel, for this opportunity to be with you. And I hope all the listeners have enjoyed some of the stories I've told.
Certainly, totally empowering, Mr. Paul. And people, let's support Mr. Paul Espenan because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering book like this to rise. So, Mr. Paul, I have one more question, which is you've been described as a someone who authentically serves in a world where safety can sometimes feel performative, checklist signed without thought, meetings held without engagement. How do you know when your leadership is authentic and when you are just going through the motions?
Well, their actions will back it up. And I think all of us can sense authenticity. And the shortest answer is you'll know. And people will know if their actions don't match their words, then that's the answer. You just have to see what they do. In the book, I tell us everything is a test. everything is a test. And if the test is, what are your actions going to show? And is it going to line up with your words? That's integrity. That's the definition of integrity. So that's my answer. It's all about integrity.
Integrity indeed. So, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Thank you so much, Daniel. I really enjoyed being with you.
Likewise, Mr. Paul. More to come, people. See you soon.